Okay, so despite all the problems surrounding Spider-Man 3,
Ooh, my spider sense is tingling. If you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, it still managed to gross almost $900 million at the box office, and Spider-Man 4 was already being put in development, and with it, a video game tie-in. This time, however, Activision decided to go with Radical Entertainment to make Spider-Man 4. They've been known for making the Simpson Hit and Run game, Hulk Ultimate Destruction, the prototype games, and the movie got cancelled. And that Spider-Man 4 game turned into a sequel for Prototype, and everyone got upset by the picture of who the new Spider-Man was going to be. Yeah, the late 2000s was a fun time. Yo, wait till my guys is Big Riz, and I know I said that Spider-Man 3 was supposed to be the last Treyarch Spider-Man game before they went off and made the Black Ops series, right? They're somewhat disappointing swan song to their quadrilogy of games, but nope, I was wrong. Along with Shabba Games, the lead developers for the next title, Treyarch is actually credited as the co-developers of this new title, and this and Ultimate just goes to show just how much Treyarch was better off making video games that weren't set in a movie's universe. Because even the premise for this game is really interesting. What happens when you take a Spider-Man game and mix it with a zombies game? You get Spider-Man Web of Shadows. You know that sad Spider-Man meme where he's walking all depressed like on top of a building? Yeah, that's from this game. The story starts off with the beginning of the end style opening, right in the middle of a symbiote invasion. There's a bunch of shield guys trying to fight off these symbiote monsters, and you get a little cutscene of Spider-Man picking off the various symbiote types before you're thrown into the initial tutorial. This mainly consists of you fighting off a few waves of symbiotes before learning the combat controls and swinging, but since this is near the end of the game, the combos and swing speed is that of the end game, which kind of gives you a taste of what's to come. After you take down a couple of waves, you are then introduced to a new fighting style, which is being able to fight on the side of buildings, which honestly, I'm surprised this is yet to be duplicated. As far as I can remember, this is exclusive to this game. After you're done with the prologue, it rewinds you back to 4 days prior where Spidey's having a normal battle with Venom, who shows up for the 4th time in a row. This time during the start of the fight, the symbiote in Venom, which originally came from Peter, merges back to him, showing off the next major aspect of this game, playing as symbiote Spider-Man. Okay, so I'll get to the whole like using the black suit as a mechanic thing in a little bit, but what's introduced to you so far is the ability to throw cars and other vehicles at enemies, as well as having a more aggressive fighting style. After your fight with Venom, it shows you that you can switch to and from the black suit at any point, as well as an introduction to Luke Cage, who we saw earlier with Mary Jane in the prologue. And this is the true start of the game. From here, Luke Cage tells you about the war waging between two gangs that have been going on in Harlem for a very long time now, and he wants Spidey to help stop it. He then prompts you to go around Harlem to complete the first of many random events, which unlike most open world games, are not optional. This is a game control that I just hate. This is why I don't play open world RPGs, why I'm not a big fan of live service games. It was one of my biggest gripes with Spider-Man 2 and Ultimate Spider-Man. Make optional objectives optional. Have incentives and rewards for doing them, but don't just halt the story just so we can come across a random event, just so we can tick off a checklist of, oh, what we need to do so we can progress the story. Like, it's just lazy writing. And it's lazy game design. With that being said, it did give me a chance to check out the latest traversal mechanics. In terms of swinging, although there's no dedicated way to do air tricks anymore, much like in Ultimate Spider-Man, the style and finesse of swinging is done passively as you let go of a web line. And although they've gone back to having Uncle Ben hold the web lines for you, it made for swinging to be much easier with less chance of you being stopped by obstacles. And to my joy, the ability to climb up your web line has also returned. And I think this is the second and final time you'll ever be able to do this. I mean, look, I admit, like, it looks kind of goofy. I mean, look at this. But, I mean, they made it work in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was Amazing Spider-Man 2. As well as wall crawling and wall running, you have the option to use your momentum to slide in any direction along the side of a building, which really shows off how physics is used in this game's traversal. Being able to keep your momentum going outside of a swing is one of my favorite new movement mechanics, and one that I wish I could say was replicated in later games. The swing speed does start off pretty slow, but considering you have to stay in Harlem for the first act, it wasn't a big deal. You do have the option to upgrade your swing speed by collecting these spider tokens, which exponentially increase with each upgrade. And the total number of spiders to collect is, oh my god. Yeah, I don't think I got a quarter of this in any of my playthroughs. And the rest of the first act is pretty much this. You go around Harlem just saving civilians, stopping gang crime, trying to find the correct random encounter before Luke Cage is ready to teach you the next movement mechanics. The first one is very familiar. It's the swing kick. It allows you to take down multiple enemies in one go while still keeping your momentum going. And the next movement mechanic he teaches you is by far the greatest addition to this game, and probably my favorite new movement mechanic of any Spider-Man game. It's the web strike. See, the reason why I love the web strike so much is that it allows you to pick off enemies one by one, and if timed correctly, you can chain it indefinitely, going from one enemy to the next. And there is a level of skill to it, because if timed incorrectly, it will stop the chain and completely break your momentum. The final level of Act 1 has you utilising the swing kick and the web strike properly, as you take down various snipers, trying to stop Cage from brokering peace between the gangs. Once you find out that the leader of the gangs have been setting up the gangs from the start, you are then met with your first karma choice for this game, each giving the player a red and a black choice. Red has Peter tell the leaders about the setup, and black has him keeping it a secret so that the gang war can continue. Now, like I said, this is the first of many similar choices in the game, and the culmination of your choices will determine how this game ends, because yes, this game has multiple endings, but I'll get to that. Another way that the karma system affects gameplay during the main course of the game is which allies will be allowed to team up with you during those side objectives, with Cage being the first on the list so long as you remain predominantly on the red side. So the first act was essentially just a day in a life of Spider-Man, what he does in this universe as a day-to-day, right? Dealing with gangs and, meeting up with fellow superheroes and stuff. The second act of the story is where the majority of the build-up happens, and where you will encounter the first part of various boss battles. So you find out that Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is the one setting up the gangs in the first place. Black Cat and the Vulture are working for him, and it leads to a boss battle with Black Cat, which is fought either on the top of as well as on the side of buildings, and a fight with Vulture, which really tests your ability to fight mid-air, using the web strikes to get closer to the target. Both of these end with a few quick time events, which, like Spider-Man 3, have some funny fail animations. And since this game isn't tied to a movies universe, they bring in other Marvel superheroes such as Moon Knight, who up until recently with the MCU show has been practically unknown, and this was my first time knowing about the character. And obviously Wolverine, who everyone knows. He questions Spider-Man as to why he threw some civilians off a skyscraper. And when I say question, I mean that quite literally. What ended up being one of my favorite boss battles in a superhero game to date. In between combat sections with Wolverine, he will ask multiple choice questions that only Peter and in turn the player should know, and answering these questions will add to the karma system in the game. After completing the various missions, Black Cat, Vulture, Moon Knight and Wolverine get added to the ally roster for you to pick for those random encounters needed to progress the story. Now, the reason that the civilians were attacking Spidey in the first place was because Venom is spreading his symbiote either directly or through symbiote pods, causing the people to turn into symbiote zombies. This then leads to a massive domino effect, with more and more people becoming corrupted. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents start roaming the streets, with both them and the police going for Spidey as they believe that he has also gone corrupted. Which, I mean, can you blame them? And as you go around, you see smoke coming from buildings, and you can really see the city in a messed up state. The final stages of Act 2 shows Black Cat, who is commanding S.H.I.E.L.D. to set up quarantine zones by just putting people into cages. This includes potentially the sister of Electro, who goes crazy trying to find her. This boss fight ends up testing your swinging ability, as you have to chase him to various quarantine zones until Black Cat shoots Electro at the final zone that's actually holding his sister. We then find out she was infected, and as she goes to her brother, some of the symbiote bonds to him. The result of that will be unknown until the final act. Act 2 finished off with Spidey trying to call Tony Stark and Reed Richards to get some help, but neither of them are available. You then have to break out the Tinkerer from prison. This mission was honestly one of the most enjoyable and memorable for me, because you have to use the Rhino as a battering ram to get further into the prison. You then get the option to either release the Rhino back to the city, where he can be used as an ally, or I don't know what the other option was. I just wanted to ride the Rhino again. So before I speak about Act 3, there were a couple of things that I wanted to speak about in regards to this game that I couldn't find an appropriate place to put in the video, so I'm just going to cram it here real quick. So when I was planning to make this video, I remember two major things about this game. One, that you can switch to and from the black suit at will, and that there were karma choices which affected the end game. And I had this whole premise set up about how the symbiote and the black suit is a very unique and very interesting way to teach young people about how taking certain routes and choices that may make your life seem easier can cause detriments and consequences, not just yourself, but also the people around you. Because let's be honest, Stanley made him to be the youngest non-sidekick superhero, and it would be very off-brand for him to be addicted to a more traditional form of substance, like what they can with Iron Man in Demon in a Bottle. I think that's what it's called. And now to have a game where you are in the driver's seat of those choices, where you choose whether or not you want to be good, be on brand, or go a bit more darker to be the more stronger, more powerful part of this. It didn't execute that in the way that I would have expected. Now bear in mind, this is not the biggest complaint, because Heavy Rain at the time didn't exist. The Telltale series didn't exist. Detroit Become Human is 10 years after this game in 2018. So that whole passive choice making is only really been seen in this and in Infamous. But much like with Infamous, I would have loved to have a system where your choices in the game have a much bigger effect in how the story progresses, instead of you choosing, oh, for this I want to do the good thing or I want to do the bad thing for this cutscene. No, if you want to complete a level as Red, that's fine, but if it gets too hard, it gets too challenging, and you want to be stronger, you want to be more powerful, switch to the black suit. But when you switch to the black suit, it will passively branch you off to the more negative parts of that story, or not negative, but more evil, darker sides to that story. But yeah, that's my biggest critique about this game. The symbiote doesn't make this game any easier. Your hits don't appear to be any stronger, you don't move any faster, and other than having different animations for certain upgrades, this surfing one is one of my favorites. The only benefit or difference to playing as the black suit is the use of tendrils, which replace the webs and allow for more AoE attacks. That plus the combo choices and allies are more interesting and make for a more unique story. Oh, and another thing, there's a real 5-gum advert in the form of a billboard in this game. This would have been that like Wrigley's Mars would have had to have paid Activision for ad space in their video game for everyone to play or to see forever when they're playing the game. You don't really see that anymore. There have been like game adverts before, like the Extreme Pamplona for Sure Men. There was a Subway advert with Uncharted. But other than that, the only other form of advertisement we've seen in video games now is like a Fortnite skin or like a bundle in Call of Duty. But this was really a shock to me. I don't think I've mentioned it before, but in Ultimate Spider-Man, there's also a billboard for like a Nokia phone. Just there, like a real product in a virtual world. I don't know, I thought that was quite interesting to mention. Okay, so we made it to the third and final act. This one was really hit or miss for me because some of my favorite moments of the game is taking place in this final act, but then also a lot of the things that I don't like, all the things that I critiqued previously in the previous acts, they're really highlighted here. This act gives you more of those unreasonable side busy objectives than the entire game combined. And because you start off in the south of the map, sort of like the hub world at the Stark Tower, Black Widow will tell you, oh, go save some villains more up north, go help some shield agents in the middle of the map. Every single time you do one of those objectives, you have to come back down to the south just for Black Widow to tell you to go back up north, and you rinse and repeat. This is the entirety of Act 3, and I hate it. And look, with all that being said, my second favorite thing about this entire game is just how well the world looks in the final act. Obviously, graphic capabilities have changed over the years, but the way this world looks sets it apart from any other Spider-Man game in the whole series. I mean, you can literally see missile strikes on the road. You see these massive tendrils linked between buildings. There are little to no civilians left on the street. There are new symbiote types popping up on every other mission. And my personal favorite part of this entire game is that each of those previous boss battles that Spidey has faced so far gets a brand new unique symbiote variant for round 2. And these are the levels that were truly made for this game. You end up with symbiote Electro, who becomes the last ally you use for this game. Wolverine's the next symbiote variant. First, you're helping good Wolverine evacuate civilians from a church. Then he gets infected, and then you end up having one of the most intense battles in this game so far. And after you finish, if you choose the black option, you get one of the most gruesome endings to a battle, I think, in this entire game. Spider-Man rips Wolverine in half with his bare hands. It's kind of funny. It's from the Logan fight that we are all caught up with the prologue of the story. This leads to a battle with symbiote Black Cat, which almost resembles Scream with the long tendril hair. And then you have to choose to give her a costume change. Yeah, MJ didn't like that. She was so pissed off she went off to Luke Cage. Yeah, the final symbiote variant we have to take down is Vulture, which has one of the best environments for these boss battles. It happens right at the Empire State Building with these huge symbiote pods. And much like with the first fight, you just have to stay airborne and just picking them off with the web strike. Defeating the Vulture has Spider-Man forcing him to take him to the SHIELD helicarrier, where Venom, the final symbiote, is. As you make your way to the final battle arena, you see all your allies, or at least the ones that you've aligned yourself with up until now. It's from here you have to take on a kaiju variant of Venom. This fight was very disappointing. You just have to web strike Venom 8 times, and then you get a quick time event, and then you're given a final choice. Now, like I said, there's multiple endings in this game. There's actually 4 to be exact. There's red with MJ, red without MJ, black with Black Cat, and then black without Black Cat. Honestly, these decisions are made during the last couple of levels of the game. There's actually the rest of the story actually doesn't make that much of a difference to the ending, at least. During the later stages of the game, I chose to go with entirely the black option because I just thought it was the most interesting. It actually also baits a sequel with Black Widow and Kingpin and Tinkerer hiring symbiote Wolverine back to kill Spider-Man in a potential sequel, which never happened. And after the symbiote Wolverine is shown to be returned, that's it, the credits roll. There's no end game, there's no fast traveling, there's no side missions anymore. However, there is a bug. I don't know if it's a bug, but it seems like a bug to have a new game plus mode. After the credits roll, you go back to the main menu where you can do continue, new game, and the settings, right? If you go into continue, it will roll the credits again. If you watch the credits again in its entirety, you'll be taken back to that section. If you watch the credits again in its entirety for the second time, it'll bring you back to the main menu screen. Clicking continue again will start the game from the beginning with all your upgrades, your current morale state saved, and you can play the rest of the game with all of your learnt combos, all of your swing speed, everything. I didn't play this game a second time. I didn't feel the need to, but I just thought that it was kind of interesting that there is a non-deliberate new game plus mode for this game, which kind of makes second, third, fourth runs, if you want to go for all the endings, easier, more bearable, because there's no trophies. There's no trophies. Again, I don't know why. Spider-Man 3 didn't have trophies and this game doesn't have trophies. I don't know. But yeah, that was Spider-Man Web of Shadows, Treyarch's actual final Spider-Man game. But yeah, I honestly feel like Ultimate and Web of Shadows are super underrated. I think because they weren't tied to a movie franchise, it kind of got swept under the rug and forgotten about. But with my opinions and criticism, these ones were really creative and really interesting. And who knows, if Treyarch didn't end up being incredibly successful with the Black Ops series, making some of the best campaign multiplayer and zombies in the franchise that's still spoken about to this day, who knows what we could have gotten, because this was actually cleared for a sequel. You actually would have gone to play as both Spider-Man and Wolverine. And Mysterio, and my personal favorite Spider-Man villain or Marvel Comics villain, Carnage, would have been the main antagonists. This game obviously never came out. It got cancelled. Shabba Games actually closed its doors kind of recently after this game came out, which means for the next iterations we're off to a whole new development team, and I can't wait to talk about it. Appreciate you watching. Safe.